I think there are a number of factors that account for the decline in labor force participation in the U.S. First and most importantly is population aging. Older workers are less likely to participate in the labor force. They retire. The U.S. population is getting older. About half of the overall decline that we've seen since the peak in labor force participation in 2000 is a result of the population aging. Then what about the other half? Well, about half of that other half is a result of some new trends that started to take place even before the Great Recession. For example, women had been fueling the post-war rise in labor force participation in the U.S. That came to an end around 2001. Secondly, younger people are going to school longer. That ultimately will be a positive thing for the U.S. economy, but it means that they're not participating in the labor force as much as they used to. And then the remainder, which is around a percentage point, I think is a result of the Great Recession. As a result of the Great Recession, we saw a remarkable rise in long-term unemployment. Normally, we have 10 to 20% of the unemployed out of work for more than half a year. In 2010, which was after the Great Recession, the share that were long-term unemployed rose to 45%. What caused this to happen, I believe, is that we saw a collapse in demand in the U.S. economy. Consumers stopped buying, companies stopped hiring workers, and we had a sharp rise in unemployment. Many of those unemployed became long-term unemployed, and the long-term unemployed tend to take longer to find a job, and that has been playing itself out in the recovery. That's one of the reasons why I think long-term unemployment stayed high for so long, but over the last few years we've seen a very, very rapid decline in the share of the unemployed who are long-term, and it's now down to about 25% of the unemployed. Today, I think we're coming very close to being a full employment labor market. We're starting to see wages grow. Real wages have actually been growing quite strongly once one adjusts for inflation. And with the unemployment rate down to 5.3%, particularly with short-term unemployment quite low, I think we're poised to see stronger wage growth and the U.S. Reaching full employment very soon. Research that a number of economists have done, including Larry Katz and myself, suggested that an unemployment rate of around 5.5% is the threshold where you start to see real wages grow. We're actually seeing real wages grow before the unemployment rate got to 5.5%, partly because inflation has been so low. But over the last 12 months, wage growth has picked up. The best measure of wage growth has increased by about 2.8% over the last year. So I think we are around the turning point now where we're seeing real wages grow, and I think that will be healthy for American workers. And I think it will also help to strengthen the recovery because families will have more income and they can use that to purchase more goods and services, and I think that will sustain the recovery. Research that I did now over 20 years ago, together with my Princeton colleague David Card, found that modest raises in the minimum wage did not have an adverse effect on employment. We did many other studies similar to that. We did studies looking at all states when the federal minimum wage increased, and in some states an increase in the federal minimum wage raised wages much more than it did in others. And by and large, those studies point to no detectable impact of the minimum wage on employment.